What's up, guys? I'm bringing fights that I'm looking forward to in 2026 in the UFC. I'm going to start from 125 and work my way up. Starting off with Kyoji Horiguchi. You know, he's 35, but he can still make a run into the rankings and beat up on some guys. He looked really good against Tigir this weekend. Tigir's a good win. He beat Clayton Carpenter and has that Maxim. Who I want to see Kyoji fight would be like Bruno Silva, a Charles Johnson matchup. Bruno's coming off that win on Young Sun Park with that third round rear naked choke. He's only really lost to Van and Manel Cape. Those aren't really that bad of losses, really. But he also lost to Tigir in 2020, so with Kyoji coming off that Tigir win, could be pretty interesting. Bruno's also 35 right now, so it could, it kind of makes sense to me. If either of these guys win, they could really have a chance going up in the rankings and doing something. They're both pretty old, so whoever wins between them two, send them up and give them a good run while they're still got a little bit of time left. A Charles Johnson fight would be really fun. He's also 34, another kind of older dude. I think it'd be interesting to have these older dudes fight and, see which one of them still got some miles left on them. But I think that Charles Johnson fight could be fun too. It could be interesting with the striking for sure. At 135, I think Bryce Mitchell's pretty interesting. He's coming off that Saeed win. A big problem for Bryce was just fighting at 145. Nobody at 135 can really hit like Gene Silva, Ilya, Josh Emmett. Like, there's Sean O'Malley, but he doesn't really hit as hard as them. But he's just a really clean striker who's also got pop for sure. But that's pretty high up in the rankings. A Figgy fight would be really fun. I know Bryce can't get it yet, but that would be a really interesting fight. Figgy's got a lot of pop, but I think the grappling would look pretty cool. Figgy being at 125, fighting somebody who fought at 145 would be interesting, but that might not be for a bit. But the Talbot fight, if Talbot loses to Cejudo, I'd like to see that. Talbot's got pop, but he doesn't hit like Silva and Ilya and them. I think Bryce could have a real chance taking down Talbot, getting up in the rankings. Perhaps a McGee fight. McGee coming off that Jan loss, but also looked pretty competitive. McGee's good, a little bit older. Right, I think he's like number 14 or 15. I think that'd be pretty cool. McGee ain't bad, and I think Bryce has a pretty good shot. Maybe Kyler Phillips. They came in on the same tough season, so they have some history there. Could look interesting. I think Kyler Phillips is right at the bottom of the top 15 also. But I think Bryce Mitchell could make a pretty good run. I like Bryce Mitchell. He says dumb shit, but he's good for the promotion. He brings more eyes. The title... stuff happening up at the title right now isn't too interesting. Merab's probably going to be on. Merab's been running through everybody. I think Umar's probably the only one that can really contest Merab. But at 145, I think Diego versus Mozarev, Loyev, or Lerone Murphy could happen in 2026. Either of those would be good-ass matchups. I think they're going to make Mozarv versus Volkanovski for the title shot, and Volk's probably going to retire. But if Movzar, doesn't win, he can still put up a really good fight where, people say it was a robbery or it's just, clearly a competitive fight. If it's a really close fight and Volk retires after, you could make Movzar versus Diego for a vacant title shot. I think that would be interesting. But if Movzar loses badly or he can't come back for a while, then you should probably make Diego versus Lerone for a vacant title. Also would be a really good fight. I also think they should make the Yair versus Zalal fight. And then if Diego fights for the vacant title, the winner of Yair and Zalal could hop in after. Yair could get that title shot he wants, but he ain't ready. I don't think he deserves it quite yet. At 155, I'm interested to see what Max Holloway does. I think he's most likely gonna fight Charles or Patty. I think Charles is a good matchup for Max there. Max pretty hard to take down, and even if you take him down, he's gonna get right back up, and he could outstrike Charles pretty easily. Max isn't young, but he's younger than Charles, so I think he could win. Maybe get a rematch with Topuria at some point. They might make the Patty versus Ilya title shot. They might not, but if they don't, Patty versus Max would be interesting. I think Max outstrikes Patty, and Patty would have a hell of a hard time trying to grapple Max. I think it would be competitive still. But yeah, that's probably mostly looking forward to what Max does. For 170, Ian or Morales versus Islam. I think they're the ones that have the best shot of beating Islam right now, except for Shavkat, but I don't think Shavkat deserves a title shot. They both have larger frames than Islam. JDM didn't quite have that much larger of a frame for Islam. Islam didn't really have to close the distance at all. And Ian and Morales both have good distance management. They can fight long and rangy, which I think is what really is going to give Islam trouble at 170 will be these taller, bigger guys. Ian handled Shavkat well in the grappling department. He lost, but, he didn't look really weak, and he was able to defend well. And Shavkat's got to be stronger than Islam, and Ian's still young and improving. Just looked pretty good against Bilal. And Morales, he has more power than Ian, I believe. Maybe not as flashy or has as many tools, but he also has good distance management. He has a lot of pop, and still has shown good grappling defense and handled Sean Brady recently. At 185, the title isn't very interesting right now. That's most likely going to run through everybody that's up in the top 5, so maybe Sean or Hamza could be interesting, but no one's going to really see that as interesting. People already see that as a Hamza W, so there ain't too much happening in the rankings. Honestly, I'm mostly interested in what both Nickel is going to be doing. And I kind of want to see him fight Pfeiffer or Dawkins. Both of them a little bit outside the rankings. RDR isn't really that bad of a loss. Bo Nickel coming off that head kick over Vieira. I think if, Bo beats Pfeiffer beats Poe, or Dawkins beats Bo, or Bo beats Dawkins, whoever the winner of these matchups are will get a ranked guy for sure. And I think, both had tough fights with RDR, and still a stylistically tough matchup with Vieira, where these guys are mainly grapplers, really. Like, Piper and Dawkins have shown good grappling, but I think Bo can actually utilize more offensive grappling in these matchups. And maybe, but, Piper and Dawkins, I think they would still have a good shot. I think these are all interesting guys that are right outside the rankings. And whoever wins these matchups can get a ranked fighter and start making a run, possibly. 205. I'm mostly looking forward to what Yuri does next, and I kind of think they should make Yuri versus Ankalaev. And I'm honestly leaning a little bit towards Yuri right now, if that fight were to happen. Unk's main thing is counter-striking, and I don't know if... I kind of feel like Yuri's unorthodox striking plus the pressure would kind of make it hard for Ankalaev to counter. I feel like he'd have to move back a lot more and couldn't really stand its base to counter, or else he could be in real trouble. And Yuri has good grappling too. Like, we've seen Pereira defend a lot of the grappling from Ankh, and Yuri probably has better grappling defense than Pereira, honestly. Winner could get a title fight. I know Yuri's lost to Pereira twice, but, coming off Jamal Hill and Yuri also beating Khalil. And then if he were to finish Ankalaev too, you kind of have to give it to him. And we don't know what's going to happen with the belt, really. I don't know if they're going to make Goldberg versus Pereira. Maybe Pereira might vacate to fight Tom. Maybe Jones fights Alex. I don't really want to see that, but it would be a big money fight. We don't know what's going to happen, but Yuri's beating some of the top guys. One of the only guys he could fight, really, is Ankalaev. And it would be a really interesting fight. And maybe if Alex vacates, they could just make it a vacant title fight. In heavyweight, Tom and Cyril's interesting, I think. It'll be more interesting if they have a rematch. It'll feel like it'll be more closer than we thought it was the first time it was going to be around. The odds will probably be a lot closer, but I feel like Tom's still going to win that pretty handedly if they rematch. I'm not too interested in it, honestly. Like, I'm interested in it, but I feel like I already know what's going to happen still. So, what I'm really interested in, that I feel like, I don't know what's going to happen with, is Walter Walker. I think he should fight up. I think he's, like, right inside the top 15. There's quite a few fights you could give him. I feel like the main one I'd want to see him fight is Sergey Spivak. He's coming off 2 losses and pulled out of a recent fight. You kind of got to give him a guy down. He's like number 9, I think. Walter's number 14. Like, it kind of makes sense. You got to give him a guy down coming off 2 losses and pulling out. Maybe a Lewis fight. Well, actually, back to the Spivak fight. I think Walter can win that. Spivak's a good grappler, but he's been shown to kind of give up bottom position a lot and lose to better grapplers. And honestly, I think Walter could heel hook him too. And, Spivak's decent on the feet, but I just don't think it'd be enough. It might get a little tough for Walter, but we've only seen him push so hard. He's got more to give for sure. I think he'd beat a Spivak. He could fight Lewis. He's coming off 2 wins, so I don't really know if that'd be possible. Coming off wins over Talishan Teixeira and Rodrigo Nascimento. I feel like Walter would win it. Lewis, 40 years old now, which doesn't mean as much as heavyweight, but he's getting older. And we've seen him out-grappled a lot of times, and he's never really had to deal with them leg locks. Like, if Lewis is that bad at grappling, he's just gonna know that much less about leg locks. But he's always got that KO chance. But at 40, I feel like it's only gonna get lower and lower, especially fighting young guys. Could fight Ante Delia. Beat Marcin. Tybura. Lost to Acosta. I haven't really seen much of what Delia can do, but he's pretty old. Coming off a loss. Gotta kind of give him the guy down in the rankings. But I think Walter would win that one too. Maybe he could fight Marcin Tybura, coming off a loss to Ante Delia, who I kind of feel like probably has the best chance. Like, Spivak has the striking where he could beat Walter on the feet, but I think he's eventually just going to get taken down and heel hooked. But with Marcin, he's a little bit harder to take down. And he still has the striking to beat Walter. But he's the lowest one in the ranking, so he might be the one up next. I still think Walter should be the favorite going into it and probably wins, but I think out of them four guys, I think Marcin's probably the hardest matchup. Followed maybe by Spivak or Lewis. But I feel like the most likely matchups is probably Spivak coming off 2 losses and pulling out. I feel like, UFC's nice to Lewis. He's coming off 2 wins. They're probably going to give him a guy up or something kind of big. Marcin, possibly. He's coming off a loss. He's like number 10. I don't know if they'll make the Ante-Delia fight. I feel like they're going to maybe give him somebody outside the rankings or something like that. But that's what I'm really looking forward to in 2026 in UFC. Like and subscribe and hype the video. Peace out.